What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college football top 25 for week 4 of the season. This week, a lot of teams will be playing their fourth game of the season, and we're going to be ranking the top 25s and the teams in the country that we think should be ranked. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Get to 200 subscribers, where we'll be doing that autographed item giveaway. But Ty, we're going to take you into before the rankings, and these are teams that dropped from the rankings. Obviously, we got Marshall and Michigan State here. Did we overrank Marshall a little bit?
Yeah, maybe I guess that was more about Notre Dame than Marshall. It's also, I mean, that's one of the biggest wins they've ever had, so it's tough to get back up for Bowling Green after that. But you still should beat them. And then Michigan State, I mean, the secondary obviously did not get fixed from last year. It's still terrible. But Peyton Thorne, I thought looked really good. They just can't run the ball or cover anybody. So I'd be worried if I'm a State fan right now.
And then in the others receiving votes, obviously you have Michigan State staying there as well. Which one of these teams do you think could be ranked going into next week's poll?
I'm actually really high on Florida State right now. I think they are an up and coming team. I think they have an argument to be the second best team in the ACC right now. So watch out for them.
And then I'll start it here at 25. We have the Gators dropping down 2 spots after a very questionable win. It was scary. Anthony Richardson still hasn't thrown a touchdown this year, so maybe the hype is just everyone's off the hype train now. He played poorly, 2 interceptions on 112 yards through the air. And an interesting stat I found was that they haven't scored a point in the third quarter this year, and they're getting outscored 24-0 in that span. And this is a team that is going on the road to Tennessee and Rocky Top. I think they will take advantage of them. You can see my pregame picks later, who I'm going to be taking, but I will give you a preview here, and I'm going to go Tennessee, and I think they're going to cover here. Tennessee has looked very solid, but we'll get into that later.
All right, Miami comes in at 24. Lost to Texas A&M, which, it would be like whatever. It's a really tough game, but A&M's coming off that App State loss, so underwhelming performance by Miami, only scoring 9 points. So I think maybe they fell victim to being overhyped at the start of the season, but they have a chance to bounce back. I think they'll still have a really solid season in the ACC.
23, we're moving the Pitt Panthers up over our Broncos, our hometown Broncos. This was a close game going, into the fourth quarter, but Pitt eventually pulled away and scored 2 touchdowns, and Western didn't score at all in the fourth. But the third string quarterback was the story here for Pitt, as they were out their top 2 quarterbacks. But they, he did pretty well, 9 for 12, 179 yards and a touchdown. He got his, and, he did his part in getting that road victory. And obviously they were looking for that revenge win, obviously, because Western went into Pitt last year and beat them. They got that, and they're moving up 2 spots as well.
All right, BYU drops 9 spots. Got to look at the logo. Getting blown out by Oregon. I think it's just a matter of them not being big enough or physical enough to compete with frankly, a big and physical team in Oregon. Oregon just ran the ball down their throats the whole game, and BYU could do nothing about it. So a humbling game for them, and they're going to have to beat their team up in future years as they go into the Big 12. Otherwise, they're going to have multiple games like this per season. So some things they got to figure out.
21, we got those Texas A&M Aggies you were talking about earlier. They beat Miami at home. It was expected, but that should be a different story here. Texas A&M probably should be in the top 5, and it would be a good resume building win. It still is, but it's just not the same magnitude because of that loss to App State. But they switched to QB Max Johnson going into this game. It looked a lot better, in my opinion. Obviously, some people have different opinions on that, but he looked like he had more command in the offense. And I know it's only 17 points they scored. They walked out of there with a victory. This isn't the same Texas A&M team that's putting up 50 burgers on teams in the Johnny Manziel era. This time it's about their defense. Their defense limited Miami in 3 field goals. And, I think they were I think 2 of them were in the red zone. 1 of them was just outside. But, when you're limiting teams to field goals instead of touchdowns in big games like this, you can see how it plays out there. They could have lost 21-7 if they gave up 3 touchdowns. But, they did their part. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how well this A&M team can handle the SEC, as we'll see this week against Arkansas.
All right, Oregon back in the rankings here at number 20. And I think it's safe to say that first game against Georgia was a lot more about Georgia than Oregon, because obviously they've just been rolling through everybody. And Oregon absolutely dominated a really good BYU team. It was not as close as that score. I think they were up 38-7 and actually pulled their starters for a while. So they just absolutely ran through BYU. And I think they're definitely the favorite in the Pac-12 North. I mean, that division is just nothing outside of Oregon. I know they take the two best teams now, but they still are going to have an easy schedule playing in that division. So things are looking up for Oregon, and the season's not over despite a 46-point loss in week 1.
19, we got the Longhorns staying put. And this is more just, how do they respond to that tough, emotional loss to Alabama? They respond pretty well. The rushing attack kind of took over with, obviously Quinn Ewers out, almost 300 total rushing yards. When you have Bijan Robinson, that's honestly one of the best running backs in the country. You pretty much set up for success right there. But a negative is that they gave up 415 total yards to a UTSA team who was pretty solid last year, but they're clearly not the same team they are this year. And I think that's a big concern when you're going up against these Big 12 teams. And, Texas Tech is going to be the first, what we're going to see here. At Texas Tech is going to be a tough game. But, when you get into play Baylor, obviously they've been looking really good this year in Oklahoma. That's going to be a complete shootout as well. But if they can play defense like they did against Alabama, then this Texas team, no doubt, is a top 10 team in the country.
All right, we got Washington jumping all the way up to number 18, and you can't argue that they deserve a ranking. I think they definitely deserve maybe even top 15 after that performance. They dominated 3.5 quarters of that game against Michigan State. If they could score from the 1-yard line, they would have won by a lot more. And Michael Penix looks like the next coming of Michael Vick, the way he played in that game. Now he always has games like this and then fades off the rest of the season. So they're gonna have to, make sure he cannot get full of himself, I guess, and kind of fall off like he has in the past. And if they can do that, then this team is another one that could compete in the Pac-12 North if they could beat Oregon. Like I said, it's an easy division, so you could see Washington maybe win 9 or 10 games this year.
17th, we got the Wolfpack of NC State moving up. Big win against Texas Tech, a good out-of-conference win as well, as it's a Power 5 opponent. This week should be a complete blowout of UConn. Not much to be said. The defense last week went off, forced 4 turnovers and got a pick 6 to pretty much seal the game. The offense struggled, but I think when they get into ACC play, this team could struggle. The offense has struggled a little bit here with an easier side of the schedule. The defense has been really good, but we saw the first game of the year. They should have lost to East Carolina, and unfortunately they didn't. To win in advance, kind of like March Madness here, especially with only 12 games. But that NC State team, can't afford a failure early on.
All right, Penn State jumps up to 16, and this team, I was really high on them at the start of the season, but they're much better than I even expected them to be. Absolutely dominating Auburn. Auburn's due for a really down year, you can tell, but that's still a really impressive win at a tough place to play, winning by 4 touchdowns. I mean, that speaks for itself. This team's already won at Purdue, so 2 marquee road wins already through 3 games. I think they're going to be a force in the Big Ten. No one really expected them to do much this year, but you got Sean Clifford going back to his old ways, playing really well, and their 2 running backs are just absolutely dominating. So I think you're going to have to watch out for Penn State and Ohio State going into that whiteout. Who knows what could happen.
15, we got the Baylor Bears staying put. Nothing much here on last week. They had a slow start, but they finished off in the second half. 509 total yards is obviously a good thing. But the big matchup this week at Iowa State, who probably wins this game, they're more than likely going to be ranked. And it's a big matchup for Baylor, but more on Iowa State, seeing if, the 3-0 really means something to that program here this year. But it is a tough place to play. The Cyclones have been good the last few years, and it could be a trap game for Baylor early on in the season.
All right, we got Ole Miss here at number 14. I think this is maybe the most underrated team in the country. I feel like no one is talking about them after winning 10 games last season. Jackson Dart struggled a little bit, but at the same time, he didn't have to do much because they were up 21-0 in the blink of an eye and just coasted to a win against a terrible team. So I think it's been, a really quiet 3-0 start. And I think this team is going to be a force in a loaded SEC West. You're going to find out a lot about them here in the next few weeks. But I think it's a team you got to watch out for. I think they're underrated.
13, we got Wake Forest, and this was a huge scare and I believe a wake-up call, and it couldn't come at a better time because this week they play Clemson at home. Pretty much right now, if you had a bet on it, this game is more than likely going to decide the ACC. What concerns me the most is they can't even run the ball against Liberty. They only had 25 rushing yards, and Sam Hartman struggled a little bit, but it's Sam Hartman. He could come out against Clemson and light them up for 6 touchdowns and 500 yards. You really never know which Sam Hartman and even Wake Forest team you're going to get here. But at the end of the day, the defense stepped up when it mattered most on the 2-point attempt at the end of the game. They stopped Liberty, got the win, escaped, and now on their sight set on Clemson.
All right, we got Tennessee here at number 12. Another team that I think has looked really solid. Akron's just a horrible team, so you can't judge much from that. But 63-6, they did their job there. Led 35-0 at the half. They ran the ball really well, and Hendon Hooker is still looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the conference. Throwing for 298 and 2 touchdowns in basically one half. So I think Tennessee's going to be a really dangerous team. Not sure if they can beat Georgia in that SEC East, but they're really trending in the right direction as a program right now. So in the next few years, I think you'll see them getting back to being relevant.
11, we got the Arkansas Razorbacks moving up just because some other teams faltered, but they are going to Texas A&M this week in their first true test. But if you want to look back at the game, they were down 10 here to Missouri State at home in the fourth quarter, but they did score 21 points unanswered in the fourth quarter to walk out with the victory. So a little bit of a wake-up call there, probably not what you wanted, if you're an Arkansas fan, but hey, a victory is a victory. And now we'll see how they fare against a good Texas A&M team. But if KJ Jefferson can play like how he's been playing in these 3 games, just limits his interceptions to maybe 1 or none, I can see Arkansas going in there and getting a gutty, low-scoring win.
All right, Oklahoma comes in at number 10. Absolutely dominant win at Nebraska. I know a lot of negative things are going on with Nebraska, but that's a tough place to play, and they went in there and just absolutely dominated. They were up 49-7. So either way you look at it, that's a really impressive win by Oklahoma. This week, Kansas State, I think that's going to be another easy one. Kansas State's really down this year, so they should get to 4-0 pretty easily. And I think this team has really rebounded. They had an ugly performance against Kent State in week 2, but other than that, I think they've looked really solid. Dylan Gabriel looks like the perfect fit for this team. So I think they're the favorites right now in the Big 12.
9, we got Utah moving up a spot, and they're going to be playing Arizona State without Herm Edwards. Probably could be on upset alert because we know sometimes when teams fire their coach that this team comes out on all cylinders, just firing trick plays, whatever they got in their book, and throwing it out on, a ranked team here. I don't think they're going to lose, but, you could be on the lookout for that. Obviously, this team struggled early. Obviously, they have that loss, but now since that loss to Florida, I think this team has found a lot of things. They're a more complete team now. Cameron Rising's playing way better than he did in that first game. But the running back, Chris Curry, is out for the year after suffering an injury on his first carry. So that's something to monitor as well, as who can step up in his position in the running back room and take over.
All right, Oklahoma State jumps up 1 spot to number 8. I think similar to Ole Miss, this is another really quiet team. No one's really talked about, really underrated. They have a returning quarterback in Spencer Sanders, who has had a really good career already. So that's a big plus for them. Their defense is really solid, even after losing their defensive coordinator from last season. So I think they're going to be a really solid team as they now go into Big 12 play. And they're really just going to fly below the radar, it seems like. And I think that's usually how Oklahoma State likes it. It seems like that's kind of how they do it every year. Obviously, last year they had a really solid season. It looks like they're set up for another one this year.
At 7, we got the Kentucky Wildcats. Nothing too much to report about this team except, they're doing their part. The defense is showing out, and Will Levis, the mayonnaise eater, is not playing his best football, simply said. I mean, you see those 2 interceptions there against a very bad Youngstown State team. He cleans his act up a little bit. This Kentucky team could really give some top teams in the SEC a run for their money. And I believe it. I believe it can happen. The defense has been outstanding, giving up less than 10 points a game this year. And, Kentucky is a basketball school. Well, they might put that to rest this year if they have a 10-2 or better season.
All right, Clemson holds steady at number 6. Another kind of underwhelming performance, only leading 13-6 at the half. Let Louisiana Tech kind of hang with them for a little while. DJ with another underwhelming performance. Seems like he's had a lot of those over his career. So I think this team really has to figure things out on offense. I mean, the defense, I know they gave up 20, but I really think they're going to hold their part throughout the season. But the offense seems like they're having the same issues they had last year that held them back. So they're going to be up for a big test this week with Wake Forest. Wake Forest can score. So Clemson's going to have a complete offensive game if they're going to come out of there with a win. And I'm not sure if they can do that. I guess we're going to find out.
5, we got the USC Trojans. Mostly, this has just been the Caleb Williams show. And that's pretty much all you need to know about this USC team. Obviously, Lincoln Riley coming over and it's just been really good transition. Obviously, they've played some easier teams, but I mean, the Stanford game was a complete blowout as well. But now they have a road game at Oregon State, who is a decent team, but they should go in there and dominate. And I think this team, really can put those rumors to best. The preseason rumors of how good this team will be and are they a college football contender? And I believe they are. They've really proved it through the first 3 weeks. In a weak Pac-12, USC has a very good shot at getting into the playoff.
All right, we got our Michigan Wolverines here at number 4. Another dominant victory. Blake Corum, 5 touchdowns on the ground, but not much to be said about them. They had the easiest non-conference schedule in the entire country, which as a fan is a little disappointing, but they're 3-0, pretty healthy, so it worked out to their benefit, I guess. We'll see what the college football playoff rankings had to say about that, but moving forward now, the defense gets their first test this week with Maryland, September Maryland. That's a big distinction from November Maryland. They always play well early in the season, so I think the defense is really going to have to step up. Maryland can't stop anybody on defense, so the offense should be fine. But going forward, I think the defense is really the only question for this team because now you have, in my opinion, an upgrade at quarterback from last year. And the rest of the offense is pretty much the same as it was last year. And they had a really solid offense last year. So we'll see if the defense can step up to the plate.
3, we got the Ohio State Buckeyes staying put. And this team, was kind of going back and forth in the first quarter with Toledo. But obviously the defense held their own. And I got to shout out the Toledo quarterback, whoever that is. He looked like a dog. He looks like he needs to transfer to a Power 5 school and really take over. So he played really well, obviously, but the weapons around him just weren't the best. And that's why Ohio State walked away with a 77 burger on Toledo. And lots of points to be scored, a great game to watch if you like points. 763 total yards. CJ Stroud obviously played excellent, but the big thing is Trayvon Henderson's injury. Nobody really knows how serious it is, what it's going to be moving forward. I'm assuming it's precautionary reasons and it's nothing too serious, but I haven't seen anything yet. I also haven't looked because it's Ohio State, but I haven't seen anything. And we're going to kind of see next week where that stands.
All right, Alabama stays at number 2. I didn't watch a single second of their game, but obviously they dominated against UL Monroe, as everyone would expect them to do. This week you get Vanderbilt at home. Vanderbilt's a little improved, but I'm assuming the line will be at least 30 in favor of Alabama, if not 40. So it should be another easy win for them. But if you look at their schedule, there are road tests coming this season. I believe they go to Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Arkansas, and LSU. So that's 4 tough road games. You've already seen them struggle on the road with Texas. So they're going to be in for some tests as the season goes on. And we'll see if they can play better than they did last week against Texas. Because if they don't, you could see them trip up before the SEC championship with most likely Georgia.
That one, we got those Georgia Bulldogs, a very dominant win against South Carolina and Spencer Rattler. Obviously the defense is probably the best defense in the country this year, playing some decent teams and getting some solid wins. But if you want to talk about quarterbacks that still aren't being talked about, is Stetson Bennett. He's already won a national championship, led his team there, did what he could do. But this man's still coming out here proving all the doubters wrong that he is a top quarterback in college football right now. 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. Playing a really complete game and having his weapons out there and looking in, late season form how he was last year. But the defense obviously has to get their credit. They've only given up 10 points in the 3 games this year, and 7 were in this game against South Carolina. So that tells you that the last 120 minutes before this game, they only gave up a total of 3 points. So, when they're going to play some SEC teams, I expect it to be a little more, but they're going to have to win those slugfests if you want to come and beat Georgia. But that's going to be it for the video. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button to be entered in our giveaway. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.